The Jeffrey Epstein story is back in Washington, and this time, it may be heading directly toward Donald Trump himself. I'm Christopher Reynolds, and if you're new here, this channel focuses on political power, media narratives, and the real consequences behind the headlines shaping Western democracies. No party slogans, no political worship, just analysis and accountability. And today's development may have quietly changed the rules of American politics. Some a precedent. Washington didn't fully think through. In politics, scandals come and go, but precedents, those last. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are now formally calling for former President Donald Trump to testify before Congress regarding his knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein and the associated files. At first glance, this sounds like a partisan escalation, but here's the twist. This demand exists because Republicans themselves created the precedent. Over recent months, Republican lawmakers pushed investigations that opened the door to calling former presidents and major political figures to testify about Epstein-related matters. The political target many assumed was Bill Clinton. But Washington operates under one simple rule. Once a precedent exists, it applies to everyone. And now that rule may be circling back toward Donald Trump. Why Trump is suddenly at the center? According to Democratic lawmakers, Trump's name appears repeatedly throughout Epstein-related materials, more frequently than many other high-profile figures. To be clear, appearing in documents is not proof of wrongdoing, but Congress argues it raises legitimate public questions. What exactly did Trump know about Epstein? Why are certain Department of Justice files reportedly incomplete? And were political decisions involved in how information was released? Their demand is straightforward. If transparency is the goal, a testimony should happen publicly. No edited clips, no campaign-style responses, just sworn answers. The familiar strategy, turn it into a party fight. Let's be honest, Washington excels at turning investigations into partisan warfare. Donald Trump has repeatedly framed the Epstein controversy as a Democrat problem. It's a classic political maneuver. Redefine the narrative before the narrative defines you. But this time, something unusual is happening. Several Democrats have openly stated that Bill Clinton should testify if necessary. In other words, their argument isn't selective accountability, it's universal accountability, and that changes the political dynamics entirely. He already answered questions. The controversial Defense House Oversight Chairman James Comer has argued that Trump has already answered hundreds, perhaps thousands, of questions about Epstein through media interviews. But critics say that misses the point. Press interviews are not sworn testimony. A press conference is not a congressional deposition. And legally, those differences matter enormously. Under oath, statements carry consequences. Political messaging suddenly becomes legal exposure. That distinction is exactly why calls for testimony are growing louder. Trump's responses under scrutiny. When questioned about Epstein in public appearances, Trump has often responded by shifting focus. He has dismissed questions as distractions, or he has criticized reporters. At times, he has attacked the credibility of journalists instead of addressing the substance of the inquiry. Supporters see this as strength against hostile media. Critics see avoidance. And those moments are now being replayed as evidence that key questions remain unanswered. Democrats argue that if Trump has nothing to hide, a formal testimony would resolve the issue quickly. The political trap argument. Congressman Ro Khanna recently suggested that Republicans may have unintentionally created a political trap. Power in Washington is temporary. Today's majority becomes tomorrow's minority. If Democrats regain control of oversight committees in the future, the same investigative powers Republicans used could be turned against Trump. In other words, the rules established today may shape investigations long after current political alliances disappear. And Trump, according to critics, understands that risk very well. Epstein and a rare moment of bipartisan anger. What makes the Epstein case unique is how it resonates across political lines. Left-wing and right-wing voters alike share a deep frustration with what they perceive as an untouchable elite class. Wealthy figures, powerful politicians, and influential financiers, connected, even socially, to Epstein, have become symbols of a system many Americans believe protects the powerful. For many voters, this is no longer about party loyalty. It's about moral accountability, and that sentiment is politically explosive. Allegations of delayed transparency. Critics of the Trump administration claim the release of Epstein-related documents has faced unusual delays. They point to millions of unreleased files, heavily redacted witness statements, and shifting timelines for disclosure. Republicans counter that document reviews require careful legal vetting, particularly to protect victims' identities. Both arguments may contain truth, but politically, perception often outweighs technical explanations, and public suspicion continues to grow. The information war behind the investigation. This controversy also highlights a larger issue: control of information. In today's media environment, digital platforms and tech executives hold enormous influence over which narratives spread and which fade away. Some independent political commentators increasingly argue that direct audience relationships are becoming essential as trust in traditional media continues to decline. The Epstein story isn't just a legal battle, it's also a narrative battle. What happens next? 3 realistic scenarios now exist. First, Trump agrees to testify, creating one of the most watched political events in modern American history. Second, he refuses, triggering a prolonged legal confrontation between Congress and a former president. Third, political power shifts before any testimony occurs, reshaping the investigation entirely. But regardless of outcome, one thing is clear: the Epstein investigation is entering a new phase. The larger question. The Epstein case has evolved far beyond a criminal investigation. It has become a test of a foundational democratic principle. Does accountability apply equally to everyone? Or does power still create exceptions? If transparency truly is the objective, then party affiliation should not matter. The only question that remains is simple: who is willing to answer questions under oath? And right now, that question is moving steadily toward Donald Trump. I'm Christopher Reynolds. If you value calm, fact-driven political analysis without partisan noise, consider subscribing. Because this story and its consequences are far from over.